Julian Vance had a medical condition that made intimacy impossible. 3 women had tried to love him, and all 3 ended up in the emergency room. Then Zinnia Caldwell arrived, and everything he believed about himself shattered. Welcome back to Proudly Black Stories, my beautiful, amazing Pride family. You all have been so supportive, and I promise to always try my best to give you the best stories as I learn and improve every day. If this is your first time coming across my video, do comment below where you're watching from and hit subscribe to officially join the Pride family. Now, let's get into today's story. The wind was howling its late October ballad when Zinnia Caldwell's Subaru finally gave up on life. One moment she was driving down a forgotten highway deep in the Oregon coastal range, towering Douglas firs creating a tunnel of darkness over her windshield. The next moment, the engine made a sound like a dying animal and just stopped, coasted to a halt right there between the dense forest and the jagged cliffside, middle of nowhere. Phone showing 1% battery and no signal. Anyway, she sat there for a full minute, hands still on the wheel. And then she started laughing. Not the good kind. The kind that turns into crying before you can stop it because, of course, this would happen. Of course. She'd been driving for 3 days straight, avoiding Portland, avoiding her grandmother's empty apartment, avoiding every single responsibility in her life. And now the universe was forcing her to stop, whether she wanted to or not. The crying came harder then. 4 months since Nana Rose died, and this was the first time Zinnia had really let herself fall apart. Not at the funeral where everyone watched, not at the lawyer's office when they read the will, not in the apartment that still smelled like peppermint tea and old books. No, she'd saved it for a broken-down car on a foggy road that probably wasn't even on Google Maps. She cried until her throat hurt, and her eyes swelled, and the windows fogged up with her breath. Cried for Nana Rose, who raised her after her parents died in a car wreck on I-5. Cried for the empty apartment she couldn't bear to enter. Cried for being 29 and so completely alone. She'd been taking temporary music therapy jobs in random coastal towns just to avoid going home. When she finally stopped, the silence was so thick she could hear the Pacific Ocean crashing somewhere below the cliffs. She grabbed her purse, locked the car like anyone was going to steal it out here, and started walking. The cold mist pressed down like a wet blanket. Thunder rumbled in the distance, a storm coming off the Pacific. Because it was October in Oregon, and the sky couldn't make up its mind whether to freeze you or drown you. That's when she saw it through a break in the pines, a Victorian estate that made her stop walking and just stare. It wasn't one of those tourist trap places with gift shops. This was something else. A Gothic revival mansion that had been restored with such obsessive care, it looked like it had stepped out of 1890 and decided to stay a while. Slate gray with black trim, a wraparound porch, gardens that were half wild and half manicured, like someone had given up halfway through taming them. The iron gates were 12 feet tall, with a design of ferns worked into the metal. Beyond them, a gravel driveway curved through massive cedars dripping with lichen. No signs, no mailbox, just a small intercom panel that looked brand new next to the old gates. Zinnia was reaching for the call button when a voice made her jump. "Lord Child, you look like something the tide dragged in." The woman coming around from the garden side was maybe late 60s, black with skin like polished mahogany and silver hair tucked under a woolen beanie. She wore mud-stained work boots and carried a wood-splitting axe like a weapon. Her eyes were sharp but kind. "I'm so sorry," Zinnia said, suddenly aware of her tear-swollen face and 3-day-old clothes. "My car broke down about a mile back and my phone died, and I saw the house and thought maybe... You thought maybe old Maud would let you use a phone and get you some cider before you pass out in this cold?" The woman was already opening a smaller pedestrian gate. Come on, then. Don't just stand there letting the damp get into your bones. I don't want to impose. Too late. You already imposed by looking pitiful on my doorstep. I'm Maud Higgins, and I don't let folks suffer when I can help. Even folks who've been crying their eyes out in broken-down cars. She said it matter-of-fact, not unkind. Now get yourself in here before this storm hits. Zinnia followed her up the long driveway. Up close, the house was even more overwhelming. Every detail was perfect. The shingles, the stained glass, the copper rain chains turning green with patina, hardy mums in massive urns on either side of the heavy oak door. But there was something strange about it, too. It was too perfect, too untouched, like a museum or a movie set. Inside was warm and dim, and smelled like cedar wood and dried herbs, and something cooking that made Zinnia's stomach clench with hunger. The entryway was grand, with a staircase that probably cost more than her car. Correction? More than her dead car. The floors were dark walnut, worn smooth. Antique furniture that actually looked used, not just displayed, but still that weird feeling like walking through a house where no one actually lived. Maud led her to a kitchen that managed to be both state-of-the-art and completely in keeping with the house's age. Granite counters and a commercial stove, but also a cast-iron sink and open shelving with stoneware. She poured Zinnia a mug of hot cider that warmed her hands instantly and set a plate of huckleberry scones on the table. They were still warm. "Eat," Maud ordered. "You look half-starved." Zinnia bit into one and almost moaned. Buttery, tart, still warm from the oven, sweet enough to make her eyes water for a different reason. "These are incredible. Nana Higgins' recipe. Been making them 40 years. Maud was already on the phone with the tow company. Highway 101, mile marker 40, just south of the Vance place. Subaru, green. No, sir. Tomorrow morning is fine. Winds are picking up too high tonight." She hung up and looked at Zinnia with something like sympathy. "Truck won't come till morning. You're stuck with me and the hermit upstairs." "Hermit? That's what I call him. Mr. Julian haunts this place like he died years ago, but he's still breathing." She said it with affection and frustration mixed together. "Been here 8 years, and I've been trying to get that boy to live again the whole time." That's when Zinnia heard it. Piano music drifting down from somewhere above them. Not Mozart or Bach or anything she recognized. Something original. Something that sounded like loneliness had learned to sing. The melody was so beautiful and so sad it stopped her mid-bite. It wound through the house like fog, complex and simple at the same time. Whoever was playing knew what they were doing. But more than that, they were feeling something. Really feeling it. Every note ached. "What is that?" she whispered. "Julian composes when the storms come in. Been doing it 8 years, locked up in that music room." Maud was pulling out ingredients for something, moving around the kitchen with easy familiarity. "Plays that same song over and over some days. Other days it's something new. Today's new. Must be feeling something particular. Why doesn't he come down?" Maud's hand stilled over a cutting board. "Same reason you've been driving around for 3 days instead of going home, I'd wager. Sometimes grief makes us run. Sometimes it makes us hide. Julian chose to hide." The observation landed like a punch. Zinnia looked down at her cider. "How did you—" "Child, I raised 5 babies and worked for 3 generations of Vances. I know a runner when I see one, and I know a hider when I work for one." She started chopping potatoes with quick, efficient strokes. "You got somewhere you supposed to be?" "Portland. My grandmother's apartment. She died 4 months ago, and I can't." Zinnia's voice cracked. "I can't walk in there. Everything's exactly like she left it. Her reading glasses on the table, her slippers by the door. I keep taking these temporary jobs. Music therapy for kids, anywhere but there. Maud nodded. Like this made perfect sense. Your grandmother raised you? After your parents died? Yeah, the car crash. I was 6. She took me in and she was everything. Every Sunday we'd make pancakes and she'd put on Etta James and we'd dance in the kitchen. The tears were coming again. I haven't been able to listen to music since she passed, until now. This doesn't hurt. That's because it's honest, Maud said. Julian's music. It don't lie. He's up there telling the truth, even if he won't come down here and say it out loud. The piano music shifted into something slower, more contemplative. Rain started lashing against the windows, the storm arriving right on schedule. I should go, Zinnia said without conviction. I'm sure you have things to do, and You're just going to sit right there and eat those scones and drink that cider and wait out this storm in a dry house instead of walking back to your dead car in the rain. Maud pointed a knife at her. I'm making clam chowder. You'll stay for dinner. I already made up the blue room for you. And before you argue, you got nowhere to go till morning anyway, and I could use the company. This house is too quiet with just me and the hermit. Zinnia wanted to argue, but she was so tired. Tired of driving, tired of running, tired of being alone with her grief. Thank you, she said quietly. Really, I don't know what I would have. You would have figured it out, but you don't have to. Not tonight. Maud's voice softened. Now finish those scones and then you can wander if you want. Just maybe stay downstairs. Julian don't see people. But Zinnia was already drawn to the music. She took her cider and drifted out of the kitchen, following the sound. The house was a maze of rooms, all beautifully maintained. A library with floor-to-ceiling shelves and leather chairs, a dining room with a table that could seat 20, a parlor with instruments in cases along the walls, violins, guitars, a cello, and everywhere photos. Julian Vance at different ages. As a child with what must have been his parents standing in front of this same house. As a teenager, tall and lanky. As a young man in his 20s, filled out and handsome, surrounded by people at what looked like ribbon cuttings and charity events, building sites, an eco-village in what she recognized as Seattle. Always that same genuine smile, always engaged, present, alive. And then, nothing. The photos stopped abruptly. She checked the dates on the frames. 8 years ago, October. Everything before that date was full of life and people and purpose. Everything after was silence. The music pulled her upstairs. Wide steps with a dark wood railing. Portraits of previous Vances watching with painted eyes. The second floor was just as perfect as the first. More rooms, more antiques, more of that strange museum quality. The music room doors were open at the end of the hall. Zinnia stood in the doorway, not crossing the threshold. The room was all windows on one side, looking out over the cliffs and the churning gray ocean beyond. Rain streaked down the glass now, the storm settling in. In front of the window sat a grand piano, black and glossy. And at the piano, Julian. Even sitting, she could tell he was huge, well over 6 feet, shoulders that seemed too broad for the piano bench, hands that looked like they should be framing houses instead of pulling this kind of delicate beauty from ivory keys. He wore a heavy wool sweater and dark jeans. His hair was dark, curling slightly at the collar, with gray at the temples. He didn't turn around. The music continued for another minute, then faded into silence. The rain filled the quiet. You shouldn't be up here. His voice was deep, educated, raspy around the edges in that way that meant long silences. Not unkind, just stating a fact. I'm sorry, Zinnia said from the doorway. I didn't mean to intrude. I'm Zinnia. My car broke down and Maud very kindly. Maud lets everyone in. But there was warmth in his voice when he said her name. Real affection. You should go back downstairs. Tow truck won't come till morning. Storm's too bad?" He still hadn't turned around. Backlit by the gray light of the storm, he was just a silhouette, massive and still and somehow lonely in a way that made her chest ache. "That piece you were playing?" Zinnia said. "Did you write it?" A pause. "Yes." "It's the most beautiful thing I've ever heard." She meant it. And the saddest. His shoulders tensed. She saw his hands flex on his thighs. "You should go." But Zinnia was so tired of doing what she should do, should go home, should clean out Nana Rose's apartment, should stop running, should. Instead, she slid down to sit with her back against the doorframe, cider still in her hands. "The melody sounds like missing someone," she said quietly. "Someone you loved who's gone?" Julian's hands went still. "What would you know about it?" It wasn't really a question, but Zinnia answered anyway. "My grandmother died 4 months ago. She raised me after my parents died. Every Sunday she'd make pancakes and play Etta James, and we'd dance. I haven't been able to listen to music since she passed. It hurt too much. But your music, it doesn't hurt. It understands." The silence stretched long enough that she thought he wouldn't respond. Then, so quiet she almost missed it. "I'm sorry for your loss. Who did you lose?" "Myself." The word hung in the air between them, heavy and true. Zinnia drew her knees up, made herself smaller in the doorway, tried to be less of an intrusion. "How do you lose yourself?" "By making choices you can't come back from. By becoming something you can't live with." He shifted on the bench. Still didn't turn. "I used to design things. Schools, community centers, sustainable housing for people who needed it most. After the flooding in 18, I designed a shelter system in Seattle. Saw it through from blueprint to opening day. It was the best thing I'd ever done." "Past tense," Zinnia said. "I don't go out anymore. Haven't left this property in 8 years except twice. Both times after dark, both times necessary. I work remotely now. Design from here, consult, email blueprints and let other people build. But I can't." His voice broke off. The rain got harder, drumming on the roof, pouring down the windows. The light was going gray and dim. "What happened 8 years ago?" Zinnia asked gently. She heard him inhale, sharp and pained. "How did you know it was 8 years?" "All the photos downstairs stopped then, October, 8 years ago. You look happy in them. Really happy, then nothing." The silence was so long she thought she'd pushed too far. Then Julian started talking, voice flat and careful, like he was reading from a script he'd memorized. "I was supposed to get married, October 15th, 8 years ago, Pioneer Square in Seattle, 300 guests. My fiancée, Elena, she was everything. Smart, funny, kind. We'd been together 2 years. I loved her so much it scared me." Zinnia waited outside. The storm intensified. "We decided to wait for the wedding night. Religious reasons partly, but also I was nervous about certain things, physical things. But the night before the wedding we were both so happy, and she said, 'Why wait one more day? We're already committed.' And I wanted her so badly and she wanted me. And we went to her hotel room and we—" His voice cracked completely. Zinnia saw his shoulders shake. "I hurt her badly. There was blood and she was crying and in pain, and I took her to the emergency room. They had to examine her, make sure there wasn't serious damage. And the whole time she wouldn't look at me, wouldn't speak to me. By morning she'd left, just gone. Left a note calling off the wedding. I haven't seen her since, haven't heard from her since. 300 guests, and I had to tell every single one of them the wedding was canceled, and I couldn't even explain why." Zinnia's throat was tight. "Zinnia, I'm built wrong," he said clinically, like a diagnosis. disproportionate. It's a medical condition, but that doesn't matter to the women who can't. I've tried 3 times in my life to be with someone. High school girlfriend when I was 17, college girlfriend at 23, Elena at 26. Each time the same thing. Pain, blood, tears, emergency room visits twice. I'm not just talking about discomfort or needing to go slow. I'm talking about physical impossibility. About causing real injury to people I cared about. So you disappeared, Zinnia said softly. So I renovated this house on the edge of the world, and I disappeared. Better to be alone than to be a monster. Better to hide than to hurt someone else I love. His voice was hollow. I've been here 8 years. Maud comes every day. Food gets delivered. I see my doctor once a year and he comes here. Everything else I do remotely. Design work, consultations, business. I haven't had a real conversation with anyone other than Maud in years. You're having one now, Zinnia pointed out. You'll leave in the morning. Everyone leaves. What if I don't want to? Julian finally moved, but only to drop his head into his hands. Why? Why would you want to stay? You don't even know me. I know you compose music that understands grief. I know you designed shelters for people who lost everything. I know you'd rather spend 8 years alone than risk hurting someone again. I know you're in pain, and you've been carrying it by yourself for so long. You've forgotten what it feels like to share it. Zinnia's voice was gentle but firm. I know I've been driving in circles for 4 months because I can't face going home. I know I'm lonely in a way that makes me feel hollow. And I know sitting here listening to you play piano is the first time I felt less alone since Nana Rose died. The rain poured down. The room was almost dark now, just gray light from the windows. Julian was a shadow at the piano, silent and still. Will you come back? He asked finally. So quiet she barely heard it. Tomorrow, if it rains. Just to talk. It's Oregon in October, Zinnia said. It always rains. She thought she heard something that might have been a laugh, small and rusty, but real. Tomorrow then. Tu soton mau. Tu ikamak cho, she agreed. Zinnia went back downstairs, back to the kitchen, where Maud was stirring a pot of chowder that smelled like heaven. The older woman looked at her with knowing eyes, but didn't ask questions, just ladled soup into a bowl and set out sourdough bread and poured more cider. That night, Zinnia slept in a bedroom that was all blue-patterned wallpaper and antique furniture and sheets that smelled like cedar. She slept better than she had in months. Maybe because she was exhausted. Maybe because the house felt safe despite its strangeness. Or maybe because for the first time since Nana Rose died, she had something to look forward to. It rained the next day, and the day after that, and the day after that. November arrived in a wall of windstorms, and Zinnia came every afternoon at 2. The tow truck came that first morning and declared her Subaru dead, transmission failure. Maud drove her to pick up her things, and they left the car at a mechanic's in town who offered her $500 for parts. Zinnia took it. She used some of the money to rent a room at a bed and breakfast in Seaside. But somehow she kept ending up at the estate, kept showing up at 2 so, kept sitting in that doorway while Julian played piano. They never saw each other. Not really. He stayed at the piano, back to the door. She stayed in the hallway. But they talked. On day 3, she brought her acoustic guitar, started playing along with him, finding harmonies to his melodies. The music they made together was something neither could have created alone. Complex and simple, sad and hopeful. Perfect. On day 5, he played her something he called October 15th. I compose one piece every year on that date, 15 minutes long, the exact amount of time it took for my entire life to fall apart. It was devastating. She cried through the whole thing. On day 7, she told him about her work, music therapy for traumatized kids, nonverbal children, autistic kids, kids who'd been through things no child should experience. Music reaches them when nothing else can, she explained. It's not about making them talk or fixing them. It's about giving them a voice, whatever form that takes. Some kids will never speak, but they can sing. Some can't handle being touched, but they can play drums. Music meets them where they are. Julian asked questions, thoughtful and engaged. Turned out he understood psychology, spatial design, how environments affected healing. When I designed that shelter in Seattle, I spent months researching childhood trauma, how ceiling height affects anxiety, how natural light impacts mood, color theory for calming spaces. I wanted those kids to feel safe. You should do it again, Zinnia said. Design healing spaces. Can't. Have to see the sites, meet the clients, be present. I can't do that anymore. But he sounded wistful, like he missed it. On day 9, Maud brought them lunch, smoked salmon chowder. That was so good Zinnia almost cried again. She ate in the hallway. Julian ate in the music room. They talked through the door about nothing and everything. Maud watched them with something like hope in her eyes. On day 12, the rain finally stopped. Bright November sunshine. Crisp and cold. Zinnia showed up at 2 anyway. It's sunny, Julian said from the music room. I know, but I'm here anyway, if that's okay. Long pause, then piano music. Not sad this time. Something lighter, something that sounded almost like happiness. That afternoon, Zinnia gathered her courage. I have a client, a 10-year-old boy named Leo. He's nonverbal, autistic, struggles with sensory input. Everything overwhelms him, but he loves music. Hums constantly, rocks to rhythms only he can hear. I've been working with him for 6 months, and we've made some progress. But I think your music could reach him in a way I can't. I don't see people, Zinnia. You wouldn't have to. You could stay exactly like this, behind the piano. I'd bring him to the doorway like I sit. He'd just listen. Please, Julian, just once. I really think it could help him. Silence. She could hear him breathing, hear the uncertainty. I'll think about it, he said finally. She left without pushing. Drove back to the B&B and spent the evening looking at apartments in the area. She'd been offered a 3-month contract at a hospital in Astoria, 40 minutes from the estate. She'd said no initially, still thinking she'd go back to Portland eventually. But now, she called them back. Is the position still available? It was. She took it. That night, her phone rang. Julian. He'd gotten her number from Maud. His voice sounded strange over the phone, more intimate somehow without the distance of the hallway. Wednesday, he said. 2. I'll play for your client. But Zinnia, I stay hidden. That's not negotiable. That's perfect, she said, relief flooding through her. Thank you. This means everything. Don't thank me yet. I don't know if I can actually do this. You can, she said with certainty she didn't entirely feel. I know you can. After they hung up, she sat on the bed in her rented room and realized something. She hadn't thought about Nana Rose's empty apartment in days, hadn't felt that crushing loneliness. She'd been too focused on Julian, too interested in their conversations, too invested in his healing. Which was probably not healthy. Maud was right. She was running. But at least she was running towards something instead of just away. Wednesday arrived cool and cloudy. The first hint that maybe winter storms were taking a breather. Zinnia picked up Leo and his mother Sarah from their house in Cannon Beach. Leo was small for 10, all dark curls and huge hazel eyes that didn't quite meet anyone's gaze. He rocked in the back seat, humming tunelessly, hands flapping when they passed anything that seemed to distress him. A barking dog, a loud truck, his own reflection in the window. Sarah looked exhausted. Single mother working 2 jobs. doing her best with a child she loved but didn't always understand. "He's been having a hard week," she said quietly. "Lots of meltdowns. I almost canceled, but he seemed calmer this morning when I told him we were seeing you." "We're trying something new today," Zinnia said. "My friend Julian is going to play piano for Leo." He's shy. He'll stay out of sight. But his music is special. I think Leo will respond to it." Maud met them at the door with hot cocoa and fresh molasses cookies. She knelt down to Leo's level, not trying to make eye contact, just offering a cookie. "For you. Made them this morning." Leo took it carefully, sniffed it, then took the tiniest bite. His face lit up. He ate the whole thing in small, precise bites while Maud beamed. Zinnia led them upstairs slowly, letting Leo set the pace. He was taking in everything: the high ceilings, the portraits, the way light came through the windows. At the music room door, she paused. Julian had set up a folding screen. He was behind it. Just a shadow. "Leo, this is my friend Julian. He's going to play piano. Is that okay?" Leo didn't respond, just rocked slightly, humming. Then the music started. Julian played Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star, but somehow he made it transcendent. Simple melody transformed into something layered and beautiful and safe. Leo went completely still, stopped rocking, stopped humming. His hands dropped to his sides. He was listening with his entire body. Zinnia felt tears prick her eyes. Sarah grabbed her hand, squeezed tight. Julian continued, "You are my sunshine." Edelweiss. What a wonderful world. Each one perfect. Each one somehow speaking directly to this small boy who struggled to exist in a world too loud and too much. And then Leo moved. Walked slowly towards the screen. Zinnia started to stop him, but Julian spoke softly. "It's all right." Leo peeked around the screen, saw Julian, all of him, the massive frame, the broad shoulders, the gentle face marked by years of solitude and grief, and Leo smiled. A real smile, open and genuine, and so rare that Sarah made a small sound. Then Leo did something that shocked everyone. He climbed onto the piano bench next to Julian. Julian froze. Zinnia could see him trembling. But Leo just placed one small hand on the piano keys, looked up at Julian with those huge hazel eyes, waiting. Julian, tears streaming down his face, helped him play. Positioned Leo's fingers, played the bass notes while Leo handled the melody. Together they picked out Chopsticks, simple and silly and absolutely perfect. Leo laughed. Actually laughed, a sound Sarah later said she'd only heard twice in his entire life. They played for 30 minutes, simple songs, then just exploring sounds. Leo was completely calm, completely present, completely himself in a way Zinnia had never seen. When it was finally time to go, Leo did one more thing that made Julian break down completely. He hugged him, wrapped his small arms around Julian's waist, and held on tight. Julian's hands hovered uncertainly, then slowly, carefully, hugged him back. When Leo finally let go, Julian couldn't speak, just nodded when Sarah thanked him over and over. After they left, Zinnia approached the screen. "Julian! Don't," he said, voice wrecked. "Please, not yet." He saw you. A traumatized, anxious child saw you and felt completely safe, felt happy. What does that tell you? It tells me children don't understand what they're seeing. It tells me you're safe, you're kind, you're exactly what a scared child needs. She paused. You're what I need too. Silence, heavy and charged. I've fallen in love with your mind, Zinnia said quietly. Your music, your heart, your voice. The way you arrange Twinkle, Twinkle like it's a symphony, the way you cry when a child hugs you. I don't need to see you to know I'm falling for you. Don't. The word was desperate. Please don't fall for me. I can't give you what you need. What do you think I need? Someone whole. Someone who can love you properly. Take you to dinner. Meet your friends. Be a real partner. I can't leave this house, Zinnia. I can barely let you sit in my hallway. I'm broken in ways I can't fix. You're not broken, she said firmly. You're hurt. There's a difference. You don't understand what you're saying. The medical reality of my condition, it's not something patience or love can fix. I've tried. I've hurt people. I can't risk that again. Then we'll figure it out together. There are specialists, therapists, ways to approach intimacy that aren't just one narrow definition of what it should be. You'd really go through all that? Medical interventions and therapy and God knows what else for someone you've never even really seen? I see you every day, Zinnia said. I see you in your music, in the way you talk about buildings you designed, in how you care about a child you just met. That's who you are. The rest is just details we can work through. She heard him crying. Really crying. Harsh sobs that sounded like they'd been held back for years. I'm terrified, he whispered. Me too, Zinnia admitted. I've been terrified since Nana Rose died. Terrified of going home, of being alone, of moving forward without her. But Julian, being here with you, it's the first time I felt brave enough to be scared. Does that make sense? Yes. The screen stayed between them, but something shifted. Some wall came down that couldn't quite be rebuilt. Can I come back tomorrow? Zinnia asked. Please. That night, the warning started. Cyclone Eliot, Category 2 equivalent windstorm, heading straight for the Oregon coast. Expected landfall in 72 hours. Maud called Zinnia. You need to get inland, child. Head to Portland. This one's going to be bad. What about Julian? He's got generators, shutters, a house built to withstand worse than Eliot. He'll be fine. He always is. Alone. Alone, Zinnia said. He'll be alone. He's been alone through a dozen storms. He chooses it. But Zinnia couldn't shake the feeling that Julian shouldn't be alone. Not this time. Not anymore. She'd been 6 when her parents died on a stormy highway. She'd spent every storm since terrified. Nana Rose holding her through the worst of them, promising she was safe. Nana Rose was gone now, and Julian was alone in that big house on the cliff. She made a decision that was probably stupid but felt necessary. She didn't evacuate. Instead, she went to the estate Wednesday afternoon, 2 watts like always, brought a bag with clothes and toiletries, told Maud she was staying. That's foolish, Maud said, but she looked almost proud. Julian won't like it. Julian doesn't have to like it. He just has to accept that I'm not leaving him alone through this. Maud evacuated to her sister's place in Tillamook. The house emptied out, except for Zinnia in the guest room and Julian somewhere in the main house. The sky turned green, then gray, then black. The wind picked up, shaking the cedars, sending branches flying. Rain came in sheets. The power went out at midnight. Zinnia was alone in the dark room. Wind screaming outside, rain pounding so hard she couldn't hear herself think. Terror crawled up her throat. 6 years old again, watching rain slash the windshield, hearing tires screech. She ran through the darkened hallways, wind nearly deafening, to the main staircase. The house groaned under the assault. Inside was pitch black. No generators running yet. She felt her way through rooms she'd only seen in daylight, hands on walls, heart hammering. Julian, she called. Julian, where are you? No answer. She climbed the stairs, hands on the railing, down the hall to the music room, found him sitting at the piano in complete darkness. Zinnia? He sounded shocked. What are you? You should have left. You should have gone inland. I'm terrified of storms, she said, breathless. "My parents died in one. And I didn't want you to be alone. I didn't want to be alone. Please, can I stay? Just through the storm?" She heard him move, heard the piano bench scrape. "You shouldn't be here. Neither should you. Not alone." Lightning flashed, illuminating him for just a second. She saw his face for the first time, really saw it. Strong features, dark eyes wide with fear and something else. Then darkness again. "I'm here anyway," she said. "We can be terrified together." She felt her way to the velvet sofa she knew was against one wall, sat down, pulled her knees up. Outside the cyclone raged, worse than anything she'd experienced. After a long moment, she felt the sofa dip. Julian sitting beside her. Not touching, but close. His presence huge and solid and somehow comforting despite everything. "Tell me," Zinnia said quietly. "No more hiding. Not in the dark. Not from me. Tell me everything." And in the darkness, with the storm screaming around them, Julian finally did. Julian talked for hours in that darkness, about being 14 and realizing his body was developing differently, about the pediatrician who'd been concerned, the specialist appointments, the diagnosis that sounded clinical and cold. Genital macrosomia. Disproportionate development. Words that meant his body had betrayed him before he even understood what it was supposed to do. About Sarah in high school, his first girlfriend, how they'd fumbled through intimacy in his car after prom, and she'd started crying, said it hurt too much. Could they stop? How she'd avoided him afterward, wouldn't return his calls. How he'd heard through friends she'd told people he was... The word she used was freakish. About Claire in college, who'd researched the condition, came prepared with patience and good intentions. How it still hadn't worked. How she'd ended up bleeding. How the campus health center doctor had looked at him with something between pity and disgust when Claire explained what happened. About the 8 years since Elena. The loneliness so deep it became a physical thing. A weight he carried in his chest. The fear that calcified into certainty that he was unlovable, impossible, broken beyond repair. Zinnia listened without interrupting. Let him pour it all out. When he finally went quiet, exhausted, she found his hand in the darkness. His fingers were trembling. "Thank you for telling me," she said softly. "That's it? Just thank you. What do you want me to say? That I'm not scared? I am. That I know exactly how to fix this? I don't. But Julian, none of what you just told me makes me want to leave. It just makes me understand why you've been so afraid." The storm howled outside. Something crashed in the gardens, probably a tree branch. Julian's hand tightened on hers. "I can't ask you to accommodate this, to spend months or years trying to make something work that might never work. You should find someone normal, someone easy." "Stop telling me what I should do," Zinnia said, sharper than she intended. "I've spent 4 months running from my own life because everyone kept telling me what I should do. Should clear out Nana Rose's apartment, should move on, should stop being sad. I'm done with should. I want to know what you want, Julian, not what you think is best for me. What do you actually want?" Silence. She could hear him breathing, ragged and uncertain. "I want you," he whispered. "God help me. I want you so badly. It terrifies me. I want to wake up next to you. I want to learn your favorite foods and what makes you laugh and how you take your coffee. I want to build you things. Design you a music therapy center that's perfect. Compose you 100 songs. I want to try, even though I'm terrified of hurting you. Even though I don't know if it's possible, I want to try." Zinnia felt tears on her face. "Then we try together. And if it doesn't work the way we think it should, we figure out what does work. Because, Julian, intimacy isn't just one thing. It's not just Just the one act everyone thinks defines everything. It's this right here. You telling me your deepest fears and me staying anyway. It's trust and time and choosing each other. You make it sound simple. It's not simple, but it's worth it. You're worth it. Lightning flashed again, closer this time. In the brief light, she saw his face, saw the tears streaming down, saw something like hope breaking through the fear. "Can I hold you?" he asked, voice breaking. "Just hold you, nothing more. I need—" "Yes." They shifted on the sofa, Julian carefully putting his arm around her, Zinnia tucking herself against his side. He was so warm, solid, real. She could feel his heart racing under her palm. They fell asleep like that, holding each other while the storm raged. When morning came, gray and exhausted, the storm had passed. Zinnia woke to find herself pressed against Julian's chest, his other arm wrapped protectively around her, his chin resting on her head. She looked up. In the dawn light, she could really see him for the first time. Strong jaw, rough with stubble, dark hair that needed cutting, lines around his eyes that spoke of years of pain, but handsome in a way that made her chest ache. Not pretty or polished, but real. Lived in, marked by everything he'd survived. His eyes opened, met hers. For a moment, neither spoke. "You're beautiful," Zinnia whispered. "You're still here," Julian said, like he couldn't quite believe it. "I told you I would be. People say a lot of things in the dark. Then I guess we'll see what I say in the light." She reached up, traced the line of his jaw with her fingers. "I'm still here, Julian. I'm not running. Can you believe that?" He closed his eyes, leaned into her touch like a man starving. "I'm trying." December arrived colder, drier, frost turning the lawn silver. Zinnia moved into the guest room full-time, took the contract at the Astoria Hospital, started building a life that revolved around the estate, and Julian, and this strange new reality they were creating. They saw each other every day now, not just voices through a door, but face to face. Though Julian still tensed whenever she looked at him too directly, like he expected her to finally see whatever monster he thought he was. They touched carefully, held hands while they talked, sat close on the sofa, brief kisses that left them both shaking. Julian was terrified of moving too fast, of pushing toward intimacy that might end in pain. Zinnia was patient, but she could feel her own fear creeping in. What if he was right? What if this was impossible? She started researching in earnest, called colleagues who specialized in sexual health, read medical journals, learned about pelvic floor therapy, and graduated dilation and positions that could accommodate anatomical challenges. The more she learned, the more she understood this wasn't impossible, just difficult, just requiring more communication and patience than most people ever had to develop. 2 weeks into December, she convinced Julian to see Dr. Helen Chen. It took days of gentle pushing, of promising to go with him, of reminding him that trying was better than hiding. The drive to Portland was Julian's first time off the property in daylight in 8 years. Zinnia drove while Julian sat rigid in the passenger seat, baseball cap pulled low, sunglasses on even though it was overcast. His hands gripped his thighs so tight his knuckles went white. "We can turn around," Zinnia offered. "We don't have to." "No, I need to do this. I haven't been around this many people in so long." Want me to tell you about the ridiculous fight 2 of my co-workers had yesterday over the break room coffee maker? He managed a small laugh. "Please." She talked the whole drive, filling the silence with stories and observations, watching him slowly relax. By the time they reached Dr. Chen's office in the Pearl District, he was breathing almost normally. Dr. Chen was late 50s, practical and kind, with short gray hair and a no-nonsense demeanor. She shook Julian's hand firmly. "Good to meet you, Mr. Vance. I've read your file." The appointment lasted 2 hours. Dr. Chen was thorough, professional, and refreshingly direct. She reviewed Julian's medical history, asked questions that made him squirm, but answered honestly, examined the documentation from previous incidents. "All right," she said finally, leaning back in her chair. "Here's what I'm seeing. Yes, you have significant anatomical disproportion. Yes, that creates challenges, but Julian, your previous partners, they weren't prepared." "Not really. Good intentions aren't enough. This requires medical intervention, proper preparation, time, and most importantly, a partner who's truly committed to the process." She looked at Zinnia. "Are you committed? Because this won't be easy. We're talking months of preparation, pelvic floor therapy for you, graduated dilators, possible use of topical anesthetics, very careful positioning, communication at every step. And even then, it might not work the way you think it should. Are you ready for that reality?" Zinnia met her eyes steadily. "I love him? So yes, I'm ready." Julian made a sound like something breaking. Dr. Chen smiled. "Then we can work with this. I'm going to refer you to a colleague, Dr. Sarah Miller, who specializes in pelvic floor therapy. Zinnia, you'll see her weekly. Julian, I want you in therapy with Dr. Miller too. Not just for the physical challenges, but for the psychological trauma you've been carrying. And both of you need to understand, intimacy is going to look different for you than it does for most people. You're going to have to get creative, communicate constantly, and let go of any preconceived notions about what sex should be." She paused, her expression softening. "But here's what I know. You two clearly love each other. You're both willing to do the work. That's more than most couples have. So yes, I think this is possible. Hard, but possible." Driving back to the coast, Julian was quiet. Zinnia let him process. Didn't push. Finally, as they turned onto the gravel driveway, he spoke. "You told her you love me. I do love you. You've never said it before, not directly." Zinnia parked the car, turned to face him. "I love you, Julian Vance. I love your music, and your mind, and your ridiculous tendency to apologize for taking up space. I love how you cry when Leo hugs you, and how you talk about buildings like they're alive. I love you exactly as you are, medical condition and all." Julian pulled her across the console, kissed her hard and desperate and grateful. When they broke apart, they were both crying. "I love you too," he whispered against her lips. "I've loved you since you sat in my hallway and told me my music understood grief. I just didn't think I was allowed to say it." "You're allowed everything," Zinnia said fiercely. "Joy and love and hope and trying. You're allowed all of it." They spent the rest of December learning each other in new ways. Zinnia started seeing Dr. Miller weekly, doing exercises that felt awkward and clinical but necessary. Julian started therapy, unpacking 8 years of isolation and shame. Together they explored touch, intimacy, pleasure in forms that didn't require the one thing they weren't ready for yet. It was sweet and frustrating, and occasionally funny. Julian was so afraid of hurting her, he sometimes froze completely. Zinnia had to learn to voice her needs clearly, directly, which felt vulnerable in ways she hadn't expected. But slowly, carefully, they built something that felt uniquely theirs. Leo came every Wednesday. His progress was remarkable. He was speaking now, short sentences, simple but clear. "Hi, Julian. Hi, Zinnia. Play music now." And every session ended with that hug that made Julian fall apart a little bit. Then, the last week of December, Zinnia got the call. OHSU Hospital in Portland. Senior music therapy lead, dream job, dream salary. Exactly what she'd been working toward her entire career. She stood in Nana Rose's apartment in Portland, finally back in the place she'd been avoiding. boxes half-packed around her. She'd spent the weekend forcing herself to go through things. Keep what mattered. Donate the rest. It hurt, but it also felt necessary, like finally letting herself grieve properly instead of running. Now this call, this opportunity, 2 hours from the estate, full-time starting February, everything she'd wanted before Julian. Before Julian. She thought about what Maud had said months ago about running versus hiding. Was staying near Julian choosing love or avoiding her own life? She didn't tell him right away. Spent 3 days wrestling with it. Talking to Dr. Miller, talking to her supervisor at the Astoria hospital, talking to everyone except the one person she should tell. Maud noticed, of course. Found Zinnia in the kitchen staring at her phone, like it might explode. "What's got you looking like the world's ending, child?" And it all poured out. The job offer, the confusion, the fear of making the wrong choice. Maud listened, then said something that cut straight through. "You love that man?" "Yes, absolutely." "Then you tell him. You tell him about the job, about what you want, and you figure it out together. Because if you stay without telling him, you'll resent him eventually. And if you leave without giving him a choice, you'll regret it forever. Love ain't about avoiding hard conversations, child. It's about having them anyway." So, on January 2nd, a cold evening with frost on the windows, Zinnia told Julian. They were in the music room, him at the piano, her on the velvet sofa with her guitar. He'd just played her a new composition. Something hopeful and bright. He titled it Zinnia in Winter Light. "That's beautiful," she said, and meant it. Then, before she could lose her nerve, "Julian, I need to tell you something." He turned on the bench, face open and trusting. "Okay. OHSU called. They offered me a senior position, music therapy lead, exactly what I've been working toward. It's in Portland. Full-time starts in February." She watched his face close down, watched hope drain out of his eyes and get replaced with something resigned and sad. "You should take it," he said. Wait, Zinnia thought. This isn't how this conversation is supposed to go. Don't you want to talk about it? What's to talk about? It's your dream job. You can't turn that down. I can if there's a reason to. If we're building something here that matters more than... Zinnia, no. Julian stood, paced to the window, put his back to her. I won't be the reason you give up your career. I can't be that for you. You're not a reason I'd be giving something up. You're a reason I'd be choosing something different. For how long? He turned. And there was something almost angry in his voice now. How long until you wake up and realize you've put your entire life on hold for a man who can't even take you to a restaurant, who might never be able to give you a normal relationship? How long until you resent me? I would never. You don't know that. Nobody knows that. His voice was rising. 8 years of fear pouring out. This thing we're building, it's fragile, Zinnia. It exists here in this bubble where the outside world doesn't intrude. But that job, that's the real world. That's your actual life. And I can't compete with that. Zinnia stood, fury rising to match his fear. Don't you dare make this decision for me. Don't you dare decide what I need or want without even asking me. I'm trying to protect you. From what? From choosing you? From building a life that looks different than I planned but might actually make me happy? She was yelling now, months of patience snapping. You say you love me, but the first real test of that, and you're pushing me away because you love me enough to let me go? That's not love, Julian. That's fear. You're so terrified I'll eventually leave that you're making it happen now so you can control it. The words hung between them. Sharp and true and devastating. Julian's face went pale. Maybe you're right. Maybe I am afraid. But at least I'm not using our relationship as an excuse to avoid my own life. Fosios, the words hit like a physical blow. What's that supposed to mean? It means you've been here 3 months. Have you dealt with your grandmother's apartment? Have you sorted through her things, faced your grief, moved forward? Or have you been so focused on fixing me that you don't have to fix yourself? Zinnia felt tears burning her eyes, because he was right. She'd finally started dealing with the apartment, but only after 3 months of avoidance. Only after using his healing as a reason not to face her own pain. At least I'm trying to live, she said, voice breaking. You've already given up. Then maybe we're both too broken for this. The silence after that was awful. Heavy and final and wrong. Is that really what you think? Zinnia whispered. Julian looked at her with eyes full of pain and resignation. I think you should take the job. Live your life. Find someone who can actually be a real partner. And what will you do? What I've always done. Stay here. Hide. It's what I'm good at. Zinnia grabbed her guitar case with shaking hands. You're a coward, Julian Vance. I've spent 3 months showing you you're worth fighting for, and you just proved yourself right, that you're not worth it. She saw him flinch like she'd struck him, but she was too angry and hurt to take it back. Zinnia, wait. No, you want me gone? I'm gone. She left, drove back to Portland through tears so thick she could barely see the road, went to Nana Rose's apartment and collapsed on the floor in the living room that still smelled like peppermint tea and old books. And finally, she let herself really grieve. Not just for Nana Rose, but for her parents, for the life she'd imagined, for the relationship she'd just lost. She cried until her throat was raw and her eyes were swollen, and there were no tears left. Julian stayed at the piano for hours after Zinnia left. Didn't play, just sat there. Feeling everything he'd built crumble around him, Maud found him at dawn, still sitting there in the dark. You're a fool, she said. No gentleness in her voice. I know that girl fought for you. Went to doctors, did therapy, learned about your condition, made plans for a future with you in it, and you threw it away. I set her free. You pushed her away because you're terrified. There's a difference. Maud sat down heavily. I've known you since you were born, Julian. Watched you grow up kind and smart and generous, and I've watched you hide for 8 years, convinced you don't deserve love. That girl was your chance, and you just proved every awful thing you believe about yourself right. She'll be better off without me. She'll be heartbroken, just like you. But I guess that's easier than being brave. Maud left him there. Julian finally moved at sunrise, went to his bedroom and didn't come out. 2 weeks passed. Zinnia spent them in Portland, finally properly dealing with Nana Rose's apartment. She sorted through 60 years of accumulated life, kept the important things, the recipe cards in Nana's handwriting, the Etta James records, the quilt made from her father's old shirts, donated the furniture, cleaned every room until it shone. She cried every single day. But it felt different now. Not like running from grief, but moving through it. Dr. Miller had told her once that healing wasn't linear. You didn't just get over loss. You learned to carry it differently. She put the apartment on the market, called OHSU. I'm calling about the senior position. Is it still available? Yes, Ms. Caldwell. We're thrilled you're interested. Do you accept? She opened her mouth to say yes. The word wouldn't come. Because despite everything, despite the fight and the heartbreak, she kept thinking about Julian, about his music and his laugh and the way he cried when Leo hugged him, about the life they'd been building, imperfect and challenging, but theirs. Can I have until February 1st to decide? Of course. She didn't call Julian. Pride and hurt kept her from reaching out. He didn't call either. But she thought about him constantly, wondered if he was okay, if he was playing piano, if he missed her even a fraction as much as she missed him. On the Wednesday, 2 weeks after the fight, Leo's session was scheduled. Sarah called Zinnia that morning. "I know you're not working with Julian anymore, but Leo has been asking for him all week. Would it be okay if I took him to the estate? I have Julian's number. I could call him directly. I just wanted to check with you first." Zinnia's heart clenched. "Of course. Leo should see him. He loves those sessions." "Thank you. And Zinnia, I don't know what happened between you two, but Leo's been making so much progress. Speaking more, connecting more. You and Julian together. You gave him that. I just wanted you to know it mattered." After hanging up, Zinnia sat in the empty apartment and cried again. At the estate, Julian was barely functioning. Not playing piano, barely eating. Ignoring Maud's increasingly frustrated attempts to make him engage with anything. When Sarah called about Leo's session, he almost said no, but the thought of disappointing that little boy was worse than his own misery. Wednesday arrived. Julian dragged himself to the music room, sat at the piano like he had 100 times before. Waited. Sarah brought Leo in. The boy stopped in the doorway, looked around, face falling. "Where's Zinnia?" Julian's chest tightened. "She's not here today, buddy. It's just me. Is that okay?" Leo's face crumpled. He started rocking, hands flapping in distress. "Want Zinnia? Need Zinnia? Where's Zinnia?" She's at her house. She's not coming today." Leo started crying. Real tears, the kind of meltdown Sarah said he hadn't had in months. He ran to the piano, played the simple melody Julian had taught him, then pointed frantically at the empty space where Zinnia used to sit with her guitar. "I know," Julian said, his own voice breaking. "I miss her too." But Leo was inconsolable now, making distressed sounds, rocking violently, hands over his ears. Sarah tried to calm him, but nothing worked. He'd regressed completely, all the progress of the last months vanishing. Sarah finally had to take him home, both of them crying. Julian was left alone in the music room. Destroyed. Maud found him on the floor an hour later, back against the piano, head in his hands. "That child just showed you what you already know," she said quietly. "What's that?" "That Zinnia wasn't just good for you. You were good together. You made each other better, made the world better, and you threw it away because you're afraid." "I can't be what she needs." "What she needs is a man brave enough to love her back, to fight for her, to show up even when it's hard." Maud knelt down, forced him to look at her. "You renovated this house to hide from the world. But that girl? She showed you that the world wasn't the problem. Your fear was. And now you're letting that fear win. I don't know how to fix this." "Yes, you do. You just have to be braver than you've ever been in your life." That night, Julian went through the things Zinnia had left behind. A scarf still smelling of her vanilla shampoo. A book of poetry, with corners folded on her favorite pages. A note she'd written him weeks ago, back when things were good. "You told me every instrument has a voice. You helped me find mine again. Whatever happens, thank you for the music. Thank you for seeing me. Love, Z." He read it 17 times. Then he called Ochu, pretending to be confirming an appointment. "I'm calling about Zinnia Caldwell's start date." "I'm sorry, sir, but Ms. Caldwell hasn't accepted the position yet. She has until February 1st to decide." She hadn't taken the job. She'd been sitting with the decision for 2 weeks, same as he'd been sitting with his misery, which meant maybe, just maybe, she was as torn as he was. Julian stood at the window of the music room, looking out at the gardens where frost covered the rhododendrons, at the driveway where Zinnia's car used to be parked, at the gates that had been closed for 8 years. Maud was right. He'd spent 8 years hiding, using his condition as an excuse to avoid the risk of living, but Zinnia had shown him that risk was worth it, that love was worth it, that he was worth it. He picked up his phone and called Dr. Chen. "I need help, real help. I need to learn how to leave this house, how to function in the world, how to be the kind of man who deserves someone like Zinnia. Can you help me do that?" "Oh, Julian," Dr. Chen said, warmth flooding her voice. "I've been waiting 8 years for you to ask me that question. Yes, I can help you. When can you start?" "Tomorrow." "Then tomorrow it is." He spent the next week in intensive therapy, going to Dr. Chen's office daily, starting medication for the anxiety that had kept him trapped, practicing being in public, first for 10 minutes, then 20, then an hour. It was terrifying, but he did it anyway. He also started making calls to the community center in Astoria, to former colleagues, to people he'd cut off 8 years ago when he disappeared. And he started planning something that scared him more than anything he'd ever attempted. Meanwhile, Zinnia had her own revelation. She'd gone to visit Nana Rose's grave, something she'd avoided since the funeral. Stood there in the frigid January wind, reading the headstone. "Beloved grandmother, mother, friend, she taught us how to love." Zinnia thought about that, about how Nana Rose had loved her unconditionally, hadn't tried to change her or fix her or make her into something she wasn't, had just loved her fully and completely, exactly as she was. Wasn't that what she'd been trying to give Julian? That same unconditional love? And hadn't she failed the moment things got hard? Hadn't she let pride and hurt keep her from fighting for them? She thought about Julian's words during their fight, about her using their relationship to avoid her own life. He'd been right. She had been hiding, just differently than he was. She'd been so focused on healing him, she hadn't finished healing herself. But she'd done that work now, faced her grief, dealt with the apartment, made peace with loss. She'd chosen the hard thing instead of running. Now she needed to choose the hard thing again. She called OHSU on January 20th. "I'm calling about the senior position. I need to decline." There was disappointment on the other end, but Zinnia felt only relief, because she'd realized something crucial. That job was what she'd wanted before Julian, before she'd discovered this whole community of kids in small coastal towns who needed music therapy, before she'd fallen in love with the moody Pacific fog and Maud's chowder and the way light filtered through the cedars. Before she'd built a life she actually wanted instead of the one she thought she should want. She had a different plan now. Something that felt right in a way nothing else had in months. But first, she needed to talk to Julian. Needed to tell him she'd been wrong too. That she was sorry. That she wanted to try again if he'd let her. She drove to the estate on January 21st. Heart pounding, pulled up to the gates and pressed the intercom. No answer. She tried again. Nothing. Panic rose in her throat. What if something had happened? What if he was hurt or sick or worse? She called Maud, who answered on the first ring. "Maud, is Julian okay? I'm at the gates and he's not answering and I'm worried." "He's fine, child. He's not home." "What do you mean he's not home? He never leaves." "He's been leaving every day for a week now. Therapy appointments in Portland. Today he had something else planned. Asked me to give you a message if you called." "What message?" "He said, if you show up, tell you to check your phone. He sent you something this morning." Zinnia pulled out her phone with shaking hands. There was a text from Julian sent at 8:00 a.m. She'd been so focused on driving to the estate she'd missed it. It said, "If you're willing to give me another chance, come to the Astoria Community Center today at 4 p.m. I have something to show you. I love you. I'm sorry. I'm trying to be brave. Zinnia looked at the time. 3:15. She could make it. She drove to Astoria faster than she should have, crying and laughing at the same time. Pulled into the community center parking lot at 3:58. The lot was full. Music was coming from inside the building. Not recorded music, live piano. She walked to the entrance on shaking legs. The doors were propped open. Inside, the community room was packed with people. Families from the neighborhood, children, elderly folks. And there, on a small stage at the front, was Julian, playing piano in public, in front of hundreds of people, for the first time in 8 years. Zinnia stopped breathing. He saw her. Their eyes met across the crowded room. He finished the piece. He was playing something beautiful and hopeful, then stood, walked to the microphone. His hands were shaking. She could see it even from the back of the room. "My name is Julian Vance," he said, voice amplified, reaching every corner. "Most of you don't know me. I designed this building 13 years ago, but I disappeared before it even opened. I've been hiding for 8 years because I was ashamed. Ashamed of my body, of my limitations, of being different. I convinced myself I was better off alone, that I was protecting people by staying away." He paused, swallowed hard. People were listening, really listening. "But someone taught me that hiding isn't protecting. It's just being afraid. And I've been afraid for so long, I forgot how to live. Until a woman named Zinnia Caldwell walked into my life on a stormy day and showed me that love means being brave. That being different doesn't mean being less. That I was worth fighting for, even when I didn't believe it myself." Tears were streaming down Zinnia's face. "I pushed her away because I was terrified that if I let myself be fully loved, I'd eventually be abandoned anyway. So I made it happen first. I hurt the person I love most because I thought it would hurt less if I controlled it. But I was wrong. It hurt more, and worse. I hurt her." He stepped away from the microphone, walked down from the stage, through the crowd, straight to Zinnia, dropped to one knee right there in front of everyone. People gasped. Someone started crying. Zinnia couldn't move. "Here's my first question for you listening to this story. Have you ever pushed someone away because you were afraid of being hurt first? Have you ever sabotaged your own happiness out of fear?" "Zinnia Caldwell," Julian said, voice shaking but clear. "I can't promise you perfect. I can't promise you easy. I'm in therapy. I'm on medication. I'm learning how to exist in the world again. And some days I still want to hide. But I promise you, I will wake up every day and choose to be brave enough to be loved by you. I will build you a life full of music and light. I will never hide from you again." He pulled a small box from his pocket, opened it to reveal a simple silver ring with a small sapphire that caught the light. "I love you. I choose you. Will you choose me back? Will you marry me?" The entire room was silent, waiting. Zinnia was sobbing too hard to speak at first. She dropped to her knees in front of him, hands on his face. "You left the house," she whispered. You're here, in public, playing music for hundreds of people. I'd do anything for you. You're really here. I'm really here, being braver than I've ever been, because you're worth it." "I'm sorry too," Zinnia said through tears. "You were right. I was hiding with you instead of facing my own grief. I was so focused on fixing you I didn't deal with my own broken pieces. But I have now. I sorted Nana Rose's apartment. I said no to the Oaks U job. I chose this life, this place, you, not because I'm avoiding anything, but because this is what I actually want." "You said no to your dream job?" "It stopped being my dream the moment I fell in love with you. My dream now is building something here with you, in these communities that need us. Music therapy for kids who can't afford it, spaces designed for healing, us, together, making something beautiful." Julian was crying now, too. Is that a yes? Yes. 1,000 times yes. I choose you, Julian, in the light and in the darkness, when you're brave and when you're scared. I choose us. He slid the ring on her finger with shaking hands, then pulled her close and kissed her in front of the entire community. People erupted in applause and cheers. When they finally pulled apart, Leo was there. He'd been in the crowd with Sarah. He pushed between them, wrapped his arms around both of them. Together, he said clearly. Zinnia and Julian. Together. Happy now? Yeah, buddy, Julian said, voice breaking. Happy now. Here's my second question. When you think about the bravest thing you've ever done, was it something big and dramatic? Or was it something small like showing up and telling the truth? The community center hosted an impromptu celebration. Someone brought smoked salmon dip. Someone else had a tray of cupcakes they'd been taking to a birthday party. Maud appeared like magic with cider and molasses cookies. Julian played piano while Zinnia played guitar. Leo sat between them, occasionally hitting random keys, laughing when they incorporated his notes into the song. Children danced. Old folks swayed. The community Julian had helped build years ago welcomed him back like he'd never left. As the sun set, Maud pulled them both aside. I'm proud of you, she said to Julian. Took you long enough, but you did it. You stopped hiding. I had good motivation, he said, arm around Zinnia. Maud turned to Zinnia. And you, child, you stopped running. Turns out the thing I was running toward was better than anything I was running from. Nana Rose would be proud of you, both your grandmothers, mine and yours. They'd say you finally learned what love really means, showing up, even when it's hard. They drove back to the estate together that night, hands linked, making plans. The wedding would be in the spring, on the cliffs overlooking the ocean, small and simple. Just the people who mattered. But before that, they had work to do. Therapy to continue, both individually and together. Intimacy to explore carefully, with medical guidance and patience and communication. A business to start. Combining Julian's architectural expertise with Zinnia's music therapy knowledge to create healing spaces for traumatized children across the Pacific Northwest. It wouldn't be easy, but it would be theirs. That night in the music room, Julian played her a new composition. I wrote this today, before I knew if you'd even show up. It's called Zinnia and Light, because that's what you are. That's what you brought me. It was the most beautiful thing she'd ever heard. 6 months later, on a perfect May morning when the wild rhododendrons were in full bloom, they got married. Maud officiated, having gotten ordained online specifically for this purpose. She wore her best wool suit and cried through the entire ceremony. Sarah was maid of honor. Leo was ring bearer. Carrying the rings with intense concentration, speaking in full sentences now about how this was the most important job anyone had ever given him. Sarah and her new boyfriend were there. The whole community from Astoria. Neighbors from the surrounding towns. The small but growing staff of their new non-profit, Coastal Harmony, which provided free services to underserved kids across Oregon. Julian's vows. Zinnia, you taught me that I was never too broken for this world. I was just waiting for someone brave enough to love all of me. You taught me that healing isn't about being perfect. It's about choosing each other every day, fears and all. You gave me back my life. I choose you today and every day forward, in the rain and in the sunshine, in the darkness and in the light, through every fear, every challenge, every joy. You're my home. Zinnia's vows. Julian, the first time I heard you play piano in the storm, I heard a man who was lonely. But you weren't alone. You just didn't know I was coming yet. You taught me that home isn't a place. It's a person, that running from grief doesn't heal it. Facing it does. That love isn't about fixing each other, it's about choosing each other, especially when things are hard. You're my home, and I will choose you through every storm, every fear, every beautiful, imperfect moment. I love you exactly as you are. They kissed as husband and wife. The community cheered. Maud sobbed. Leo yelled, "Finally!" which made everyone laugh. The reception was pure Oregon coast. Clam chowder and grilled salmon and berry cobbler and cider and local craft beer, a bluegrass band that got everyone dancing. Julian danced with Zinnia in front of everyone. Still nervous, but doing it anyway, because she was worth every moment of fear. As the sun set, turning the ocean to gold, and the celebration continued, they snuck away to the music room. Just the two of them. The sounds of joy drifting up from below. "Happy?" Zinnia asked, wrapped in his arms. "Terrified," Julian admitted. "But yes, so happy I don't have words for it." "Terrified of what? Tonight? Our wedding night? What if I can't? What if after everything we've worked on, it still doesn't?" She put her fingers over his lips. "Then we'll figure it out together, like we've figured out everything else." "Julian, I didn't marry you for one specific kind of intimacy. I married you for this. For music and conversation and terrible jokes and the way you cry at everything. Whatever happens tonight, we'll make it ours." "Okay." He kissed her deep and slow and full of promise. "Okay." That night in their bedroom at the estate, they were finally fully intimate for the first time. It had taken 9 months of preparation. Working with Dr. Chen and Dr. Miller, medical dilators and topical medications and research and communication, hours of talking about fears and needs and boundaries, practicing patience and trust and vulnerability. It wasn't perfect. There were moments they had to stop, adjust, breathe, times when old fears tried to creep in and they had to talk each other through it. Zinnia guided him with words and touch. Julian listened and responded and checked in constantly. "Okay," he whispered, terrified. "More than okay. Stay with me. Look at me. You're not going to hurt me. We're doing this together." Slow and careful and full of communication, positions they'd researched and practiced, patience when things didn't work exactly right, adjustments and laughter when something felt awkward, trust when it felt vulnerable, and finally, success. Not perfect or smooth or easy, but beautiful in its imperfection. Healing for both of them in ways that went far beyond physical. Afterward, lying tangled together, both crying with relief and joy, Julian said, "I can't believe we actually... I never doubted we would. It just had to be our way, our time. I love you so much it scares me." "Good. Scared or bad scared?" "Good scared. The kind that means it matters." She kissed his shoulder, felt his arms tighten around her. "Are you happy now?" "Really, truly happy." Julian looked around their bedroom. Through the open window he could hear music and laughter from the last of their wedding guests. Could smell cedar and sea salt. Could feel Zinnia's warmth against him, real and solid and choosing him. "I didn't know happiness could be this big," he admitted. "I spent so many years making myself small, making my world small. But with you, everything is expansive." "Good, because tomorrow it gets even bigger." He pulled back to look at her face. "What do you mean?" Zinnia took his hand, placed it on her stomach. "I'm pregnant. Here's my third question for you. What would you do if you found out you were going to have a child? Would you be excited or terrified or both?" Julian's eyes went wide. Tears spilled over immediately. "Zinnia, I know you're afraid of passing on your condition, afraid of our child suffering like you did. But Julian, We're going to love this baby exactly as they are. And we're going to teach them that being different isn't a curse. That being too much for small minds doesn't mean being too much. It means being exactly enough. Just like you are. Julian couldn't speak, just held her and cried, and felt something like wonder bloom in his chest. Their daughter, Fern, was born the following January on a rainy morning. Julian was terrified during labor, but Zinnia was strong, and Maud coached them both through it with the expertise of someone who'd done this 5 times herself. When the doctor placed that tiny, perfect baby in Julian's arms, he broke down completely. "She's so small," he whispered. "So perfect. Just like her daddy," Zinnia said, exhausted and beautiful and smiling. "What if I pass it on to her? What if she has the same condition and she suffers like I did? Then we'll teach her she's not broken. We'll raise her with love and acceptance and the knowledge that different doesn't mean less. And we'll make sure she never, ever spends one day feeling like she's too much or not enough or anything other than exactly right." Julian kissed Fern's tiny forehead, breathed in that new baby smell, and felt his heart expand in ways he didn't know were possible. 1 year later, spring again, ferns unfurling green and perfect in the misty forest. The estate had transformed completely. Half home, half thriving community music center. Children arrived every Saturday for free lessons. Zinnia ran music therapy groups for kids with autism, trauma, speech delays. Julian taught sustainable design workshops for teenagers. The non-profit was growing. They'd just broken ground on their second location, a community center in Portland built on the lot next to Nana Rose's old apartment building. They'd named it the Rose Vance Center for Music and Healing. Leo, now 12, was thriving, speaking in full sentences, helping teach younger kids, talking about maybe becoming a music therapist himself someday. His first word after brave had been love, and he used it liberally. Julian still saw Dr. Chen monthly, still took medication for anxiety, still had hard days when the old fears crept back in. But he was living, really living. He'd done a TED Talk about living with physical differences that went viral, helped thousands of people. He'd reconnected with old friends. He'd learned that being seen didn't mean dying. It meant living fully. On a Saturday morning in May, Julian and Zinnia stood on the balcony of the estate, watching children arrive for lessons. Fern, 16 months old now, toddled between them, babbling nonsense that sounded almost like words. Below, music started, piano and guitar and a child's violin and voices singing. The estate that had been a prison was now a sanctuary. "You know what I realized?" Julian said, Fern in his arms. "What?" "All those years I thought I was waiting to be fixed, but I was really just waiting to be found." Zinnia leaned into him, her family, her home. "You were always worth finding." "So were you." Maud appeared in the doorway, apron on, spatula in hand. "Breakfast is ready. Smoked salmon hash and blueberry pancakes. Y'all better come eat before it gets cold. And Julian, your mama called. She's coming to visit next week. Wants to meet her grandbaby properly." Julian's relationship with his mother, estranged for 8 years, was still rebuilding. But they were trying. That's all anyone could do, try. They followed Maud inside. This family they'd built. Blood and chosen. Broken pieces put together into something new and beautiful. The ferns grew wild outside. Music filled the rooms. And on the Oregon coast, 2 people who'd found each other in the storm, who'd learned to be brave together, who'd chosen love over fear again and again, were finally, completely home. Not because they'd changed who they were, but because they'd been loved exactly as they were, and because they'd learned that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is let yourself be seen. Be vulnerable, be imperfect, and love anyway. The music played on. Fern laughed, a sound like bells. Julian pulled Zinnia close and kissed her temple, tasting salt from happy tears. Below them, their community thrived. Above them, ancient cedars stood watch, and between them, the life they'd built together. Messy and beautiful and exactly right. "I love you," Zinnia whispered. "I love you too," Julian replied. "Thank you for not giving up on me. Thank you for finally believing you were worth it." They stood there holding each other, holding their daughter, listening to the music rise from the rooms below. And for the first time in either of their lives, neither was running, neither was hiding. They were just home. The end. You made it to the end, my amazing listener. So, let me ask you, what part of this story touched you the most? Was it Leo speaking his first word? The storm confession? That heartbreaking fight? Or Julian's public proposal? Drop a comment and let me know. Have you ever felt like you were too much for someone, or pushed someone away because you were afraid of being hurt first? I'd love to hear your story. If this made you feel something, hit that like button. Subscribe for more stories about complicated, messy, beautiful love that feels human and honest. And if you want early access to upcoming stories, share this with someone who needs to hear that they're not broken, just waiting to be found by someone brave enough to love all of them. Thank you for listening to this story. I'll see you in the next story. Lots of love.